In the next online grammar presentation, you will learn the basic use for infinitives. Unit 17 focuses on infinitives and compares them to gerunds. Please watch the presentation and complete the presentation review before class on Thursday, May 22nd. If you don't have a completed review sheet, I will ask you to leave during class and to complete the assignment. An infinitive is the base form of the verb with to, so to plus the base form. Infinitives must not be confused with modal phrases, so phrases like have to, supposed to, and be able to, or am able to. These are modal phrases that have the word to as a part of the phrase, so those are not infinitives. Infinitives are not also not to be confused with prepositions. So we have a preposition to that tells the direction in which you're moving. In the example, I go to school, to school is a prepositional phrase. To tells us which direction I go, and it's followed by a noun object, not a base verb. So in this, in that third example, it acts like a prepositional phrase. It's not acting like an infinitive. Infinitives like gerunds are singular, so to finish my GED is my goal. That's a singular verb. They are mostly followed by noun phrases, so a teacher's job is to create a desire and to learn. Yeah. And then also we add not, just like with the gerund, we add not in front of the infinitive to make it negative. So not, we don't say to not make, we say not to make. You may want to pause this video and review the examples before going on. Infinitives like gerunds can be subjects, objects, subject complements, or object complements. Here are some examples of infinitives in different positions in a sentence. In the first example, the infinitive to work hard is functioning as the subject. It tells us what the subject is about. We are more likely in English to use the gerund over the infinitive as the subject. Using the infinitive in a subject position really sounds very formal and a little overly so. In the second example, the infinitive not to change is the object. It tells us what he preferred. In the third example, the main verb is a linking verb, was. It creates a link between the subject to study and, it creates a link between the subject, her real plan, and to study. So to study complements the subject, her real plan. In the fourth example, the infinitive to hire her is linked to their reluctance, which is actually sort of in object position, but it's really a complement because it's a be verb. Their reluctance is a complement, and the infinitive complements the complement, not the subject. So we call it object complement. We do not use infinitives after prepositions. We only use gerunds. Okay, pause the video if you want to review these examples. Non-native speakers often make mistakes with gerunds and infinitives because they don't know which one to use. Certain verbs are followed only by gerunds. See the list on the left. Other verbs are followed only by infinitives. See the middle list. And finally, there is a list of verbs that can take either with no change in meaning. See the list on the right. Notice that with some of these verbs you must use the infinitive if the verb is followed by an indirect object, and an indirect object is usually a noun or pronoun. There'll be more about this on the next slide, more clarification. We've already discussed verbs like stop, forget, remember, and these verbs have a meaning change if you use the gerund or the infinitive. There's no meaning change with advise, allow, and these verbs here. Okay, so Is it possessive or indirect object? So one problem with gerunds and infinitives is, as you learned before with gerunds, we use the gerund with a possessive, but we use the infinitive with an indirect object. So this requires a little sentence knowledge. So in general, in the sentences, they advise not going and they advise not to go, it is possible to use either the gerund or the infinitive. But if you add the indirect object, their children, in the next example, you must use the infinitive. Don't confuse the indirect object with the possessive adjective, though. A possessive is an adjective that gives you more information about the noun or pronoun. In the sentence, they advise the children's not going, the children's is an adjective that tells us whose not going they advised. It is not a noun and it does not receive action from the verb. Not going receives the action. It is the direct object. Whereas in the next example, they advise their children not to go. There are two objects. Not to go is the direct object or the receiver of the action. It tells us what they advised. Their children is the indirect object. It tells us who they advised. Both are nouns, so we use the infinitive only. There are other phrases in English that are often followed by infinitives. Here are some. Use an infinitive after question words. So in number 1, we don't know where to go. Also use an infinitive after an indirect object. See the slide before. Number 3, we use infinitives after adjectives that don't have prepositions. So that homework was easy to do. We use the infinitive. Number 4, we use the infinitive to show the purpose. So sometimes we can say in order to, but we don't have to say in order. We could just say to cash. And finally, we use the infinitive with the word to and an adjective and adverb, or an adjective, adverb, and enough. Pause the video to study the examples. This concludes the short online presentation. Please bring the video review to class on May 22nd.